So you can control your own. There you go. You're on when you're red, and then you'll see the name. Press. Sorry.
So who should you? Welcome, everybody. I'd ask you to take your seats, please, and we'll get our meeting started tonight. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is John McKenzie. I'm the Deputy Mayor. I'm filling in for Mayor Node-Ridden tonight as she's away on a much-needed vacation. And I'd like to welcome everybody and a special welcome to our St. John Ability Advisory Council and disability advocates that we have with us this evening. I would ask that we do our next item.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the first item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement.
Over to Deputy Brent Harris.
Just give me 1 second, Deputy. It just disappeared off my screen here. The land on which the city of St. John, or Menaquist, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wistawik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq, the Passamaquoddy, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us reflect.
Thank you. I want to take a moment at this time and say I speak on behalf of council and staff when I say that we are deeply saddened by the passing of a member of our family team, our city family team, Jeff Ehrman, on May 21st. Jeff joined the city's public works team as a skilled worker in 2019. He was a valued member of the workforce, always ready, willing to lend a hand and go above and beyond for his team. We mourn Jeff's loss and extend our deepest condolences to his wife and daughter, his family, co-workers, and his friends. In honor of Jeff's passing, city flags were lowered to half-mast on Friday, May 27th. I ask that we all take a moment of silence in honor of Jeff Ehrman. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next, we have the national anthem.
Next item, Madam Clerk. Please.
Next, Deputy Mayor, we have approval of 3 sets of minutes. The first one is item 2.1 on your agenda, and it's minutes of May 16.
Can I get a motion from Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor Killen? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Next, we have minutes of May 18th. Now, there are 2 meetings that day, so you'll notice it's on there twice, but for the first meeting of May 18th.
Okay, mover by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Stewart. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Next item, Madam Clerk.
And item 2.3, minutes of May 18th, 2022.
Moved by Councillor Killen, seconded by Councillor Harris. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Thank you. Next item.
Next item, Your Worship, is the approval of the agenda, and there are 4 additions which came from Committee of the Whole. So those would be item 17.1, authorization for Rehabitat to apply to rezone city land. Item 17.2, sale of land off Golden Grove Road. 17.3, sale of land to Debley Resources, Inc. And 17.4, landlord agreement for 125 Station Street.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the amendment? Councillor Stewart and Councillor Hickey, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any, motion's carried. Disclosures of next item.
Next, we have the disclosures of conflict of interest, if there are any.
Any? None that I see. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Next is item 5, the consent agenda.
Over to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Deputy. I would move items 5.1 through 5.6 inclusive.
Okay. Councillor Hickey, second it. On the question. Councillor Rodman.
Thank you, Deputy. Yeah, I just wanted to first make note that 5.5, it was really great to see the social media policy come to light. And I do have one question, I think maybe through you, Deputy, to Ms. Tompkins. Just wondering, do these policies become adopted by our ABCs as well?
Thank you, Deputy. These policies are not intended to be adopted by the ABCs. This is a staff policy, Council.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? No? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion carried. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Next item on the agenda is item number 6, members' comments.
Okay. Who's up first? Councillor Hickey.
Thanks, Your Worship. Usually I'm not that fast. Usually I'm the last one on the agenda for members' comments. But I was able to attend alongside Councillor Radwan a fundraiser for the Compassionate Grief Center, which was really enlightening. And it's a group that's doing a lot of really important work in making sure that underserved youth and folks living beyond below the poverty line have access to counseling and grief counseling free of charge in our community, and it's really important. I was also able to attend the Red Triangle Awards this past week, and it was pretty exciting to celebrate Juanita Black for her work in the community and for all she's done in terms of volunteerism and her contribution to both the Y, Crescent Valley, and I would say the city as a whole. We also, many of us were at the State of the City last week, I think it was, and it was a fabulous display of all that's happening, certainly around this table, but also what's happening beyond these doors in our community. And it was really, I felt it was really refreshing and a really good, the mayor did a really good job of painting the picture of St. John and the trajectory that we're on. Certainly as well, it's also Disability Awareness Week. And I think this is the first time we've had someone offering ASL in the council chamber, which is pretty exciting and perhaps something worth doing. So I'll take the lead from our ASL guide here and say and welcome to all of our folks who are joining us today in honor of Disability Awareness Week. That was hello and welcome, I think.
Well done. Councillor Ogden?
I would like to congratulate Nicole Vare on the Red Triangle Awards too. And I would also like to thank the city carpenters who've done a fabulous job at Reversing Falls. I hope everybody gets out to visit Reversing Falls and Fallsview Park. But the carpenters did a fabulous job of replacing the stairs and railings. And I'd also like to remind everybody, food bank drives are really hard to do in June. It's easier at Christmas, but over the summer, food banks really suffer for I guess people donating because summer is a time we don't often think about poverty. But the food banks, poverty doesn't go away, and the food banks are busy this time of year. And so if you could think about that when you go to the grocery store. We have a huge poverty problem in the city. We need affordable housing. We need post-secondary courses, and we need food security. So please don't forget our food banks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks, Deputy. 'Tis the season. Canada Games are this summer in August, and many of our young athletes in the city are involved in their tryouts for the games. I think all the names need to be submitted provincially within the next couple of weeks. And a few children of some of our staff with the city have recently been named to the Canada Games sailing team. So Morgan Hazlitt, whose parents work up the hill at the St. John Police Force and PSCC, will be going. And some young fella named Connor Sullivan will also be sailing. Proud papa sitting here. So congratulations to them and to all of the youth who will be representing our province and our city at the Canada Games. So look forward to cheering them on. For those, and we know St. John, one of our strengths is our volunteers, and we are, as the city, are always looking for volunteers, but currently we are seeking applications for some of our city agencies, boards, and commissions, particularly right now, the Community Grants Evaluation Committee, Fort Latour Development Authority, TD Station Commission, the Pro Kids Advisory Committee, the St. John Community Arts Board, the St. John Free Public Library, and the St. John Substandard Properties Appeal Committee. If you're interested in any of these, lots of information available on our stjohn.ca website. And finally, you know, we want everybody to be safe. I mentioned this at our last meeting. I hang out by the water all summer, lots of boats being launched, lots more people on the water now. I know Councillor Ogden has his new boat zipping around, and I am sure Councillor Ogden, as I like to do, is make sure that we are safe on the water, working under control, not drinking and driving on the water, and keeping our life jackets handy, and even better, as I do when I'm coaching, is I wear my life jackets when I'm out and about. Wear your mask, sneeze into your elbows, wash your hands, be healthy, be kind. Thank you.
Lots of good advice for Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Killen?
Thank you, Deputy. So I just wanted to give a little, in case you missed it, on May 19th, I believe it was, we gave council commendations to 4 locals, Hazel Clark, Paul McDade, Alex Ash, and Derek Chason, all incredible members of the community, as well as the Citizen of the Year to Shirley McAlery. I just say that because for all you Monday council watchers, this actually happened on a Wednesday. But the YouTube is there, and it's a really great celebration of our community members who do so much around St. John. And I also wanted to just give a shout out to the team here at the city who has been working on launching the newest campaign for the St. John Local Immigration Partnership. We really need our community to understand the value of the newcomers and folks that choose to live in St. John. So we really want to start bringing folks together to understand their value and understand that we need to be more welcoming and encouraging and supportive of folks who are new to our dear little city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Killen. Councillor Radwan?
Thank you, Deputy. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. I did want to mention, I know Mayor Reardon is not here, but I did go to the State of the City, and I think she did a really fabulous job of articulating the state of the city. And like Councillor Hickey mentioned, we both ended up going to the Compassionate Grief Center fundraiser where they raised over $11,000, which is wonderful. I also wanted to make mention that we had our announcement that you could watch on YouTube on our catalytic projects as well. That was an exciting evening that happened right before what Councillor Killen was talking about, the awards to our community members. I do want to make mention that it is Disability Awareness Week, and so happy to have you folks in the gallery today. I did want to let the public know that I have decided to go to the FCM conference. So as of 5:30 tomorrow morning, I will be flying out, and it's something that I've invested in myself. So I'll be back on June the 3rd. There's a few of us going out there trying to take advantage of the networking and workshops out there, so that should be exciting. I also just wanted to give a big thank you to our council and staff and quite a bit of the community for their sincere sympathies since my dad had passed actually 2 Mondays ago. Everybody's messages and flowers and phone calls has been very overwhelming, and I appreciate it. It's great to know that we have such a good community there for when you need it. A lot of people don't discuss what it feels like to lose a parent, but I would probably call it pretty gut-wrenching, very difficult, and, way beyond more upsetting than you ever imagined before it happened. So I really appreciate all the support that you guys have given to me. And I did want to also make mention that I did want the communities to stay tuned for 17.3, which is close to the end of the council meeting for Ward 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton?
Worship, on May 24th. There we go. May 24th, about 11:27 a.m. I would say that right across the globe, people were in shock as students were preparing to go out for lunch around that time. And at Robb Elementary School, a shooter opened fire. And as a result, 19 children and 2 adults were, their lives were tragically taken from them. So I would ask for a brief moment of silence as we think about the victims of that Texas school massacre that happened. And those of us that live and breathe and work in school communities around the globe and right here in our own city understand the significance and the importance of safe school communities. And we all have a responsibility to play, and how you play a part in that is certainly one that you can make a difference in every single day, whether it's conversations or supporting your teachers or your students for a stronger, more resilient school communities. And our hearts and our thoughts are certainly with the faculty and staff and the families and the victims of that school community today. And thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to mention this one today. That is, although it's miles away and on the other side of a country that borders us, it's very close to all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for mentioning it. I would like to take just a moment of silence to remember those children and the 2 adults. Thank you, everybody. It's certainly heart-wrenching. I guess I'll wrap it up. Last week was a big week for funding announcements in the city of St. John. By the end of the week, we had nearly $90 million in funding announced here in the city. These announcements will lead to increased capacity to the Port of St. John and will further enhance Port St. John's competitive advantage. We will also see new crime prevention program launched, renovations made to 31 affordable housing units, and renovation and expansions to St. John Airport. We're grateful to our federal and provincial and private sector partners that have all chosen to invest right here in St. John. It's a good time to be in St. John, and we are always moving forward, as Envision would say. I also want to recognize Nicole Vera and Juanita Black were honored at the YMCA Red Triangles Award, and what an event it was. And I can't think of any two individuals more deserving of the awards than those two ladies. So we had a great turnout, and everybody had a good time. So thank you very much. Next item, Common Clerk.
Thank you. And the next item on the agenda is a proclamation. And this is item 7.1 on your agenda, and it's Disability Awareness Week.
Okay, whereas the municipality of St. John is committed to assisting citizens with disabilities to participate fully in our community, and whereas many persons living with disabilities face barriers in the areas of employment, access to information, transportation, housing, education, recreation, and other disability-related supports, and whereas we believe that more citizens with disabilities should have the chance to access disability-related supports to improve their opportunities in New Brunswick, and whereas we support the theme, adapt, improvise, overcome. Now therefore, I, Deputy Mayor John McKenzie of the City of St. John, do hereby request the citizens of St. John to join with our council in recognizing persons with disabilities and their role in the community by the observance of Disability Awareness Week, and hereby proclaim the week of May 29th to June 4th as Disability Awareness Week in the City of St. John. Thank you. Next item, Common Clerk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next on the agenda is under consideration of bylaws. And the first item is 10.1. And this is a traffic bylaw changes for school zones, University Avenue, active transportation, and alternate side parking.
Okay, over to you, Commissioner Huguenots.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Before you this evening, there are 3 amendments to the city's traffic bylaw in front of you for consideration. The first is to adjust the limits of various school zones in the city and to introduce a consistent speed limit of 30 kilometers an hour. The second is to reduce the speed limit on University Avenue from 60 to 50 kilometers an hour and to introduce a no-stop zone at the Tim Hortons drive-through to support the implementation of the previously approved active transportation project. The final adjustment is to make adjustments to the northeast-west alternate side parking program to apply only between the months of December to May. Outside of those times, residents will be able to park on both sides of the street. Tartan Street has also been added to the scope of this program, and these 2 changes are being made based on resident feedback. Additional details are included in the council report. Subject to your questions, I will turn it back to the city clerk for first and second reading.
Okay, is there any, Councillor Harris, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the Commissioner, has there been any attempt to reach out to the owners of that Wendy? I think there has, but I'm just looking to refresh me on how that's come about, to reach out to the Tim Hortons, Wendy's, that area, for feedback into ways that they can redesign it. I know that the Sims Corner Wendy's and Tim's, is always a problem with traffic stopping in the middle of the road because they want to wait in the drive-through. And I know that, it's not our job as a city to provide private business with parking for their business. It's their job to design it appropriately. And I think, if I remember correctly, that the Sims Corners Wendy's did do a redesign so that they could use all the corners of their building to get more cars off of the street and into the parking lot to do a loop around. So just curious if that's possible there, because I don't think a no stop zone is going to stop people from doing it. And then we're basically back to enforcement. So it's just kind of curious as to what we've heard from them, if anything, on that front.
Yeah, I know Director O'Reilly has been in touch with them. I will point out that there are challenges with some other drive-throughs in the city. The reason we're focusing on this one is because of that active transportation project that was approved and let's say the hazards of those conflicting modes of traffic right in that general area. I'll turn it over to Director O'Reilly to add some further comments.
Sure, and Your Worship, through to Councillor, we did have specific engagement with the owners of the Tim Hortons. Obviously, they had some concern with loss of on-street access when cars do spill out onto University Avenue. So during the final design, we did do some adjustments to the design to accommodate more cars that do spill out onto the street. So we actually ended off the bike lane sooner, eastbound towards Millage Avenue. We introduced the 2 lanes to allow more cars to queue up onto University Avenue. And in the opposite direction, we cut out some of the center median to create more of the left turn pocket for more cars to queue into the Tim Hortons. So we did accommodate as much as possible situations where cars do queue out onto the street, because it does happen at that location. But again, it is a change for sure. Trying to make a different use of an existing street with existing width, and it's needed in order to prevent queuing to spill out onto the one remaining through lane on the street. But yeah, we did as much consultation as we could.
Yeah, and so I guess my concern is that we don't have any cars queuing out into the road for that business, because am I wrong in that assuming if somebody stops in the queue in moving traffic to move into a driveway that's backed up because of a drive-through, is that a traffic violation?
Yeah, so what's going to have to happen is there's a left turn pocket on the street itself. So cars are allowed to still queue up on the street when the drive-through is full. What happens if that left turn queue fills up on the street and cars start to queue up behind them and on the remaining single through lane, those cars in that zone would be violating the bylaw with the no stopping requirement.
Right.
Yeah, so you'd have to purposefully stop in the through lane when the left turn queue lane is full, and in that case, you'd be violating that new law.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Tim. Tim, similar question to Councillor Harris. At what point when, like, with the drive-through queue lane, when does that set a certain level of precedent in the city? Because, certainly my concern, I live across the street from the Tim Hortons in Waterloo Village, and the lineup there any time of day is into the street. And I know it's a colorful neighborhood. I mean, someone threw a shoe at me yesterday, but what's worse is the traffic. The traffic is the single worst part about Waterloo Street, and that Tim Hortons drive-through brings no value to it whatsoever. Does this become standard practice where we allow people to queue up into the street and take up space and idle on public streets?
Yeah, so actually, I'll go back to some of Councillor Harris's comments at the beginning. So first of all, there are drive-throughs around the city that are too long and they queue out onto the street. That happens. To bring up Councillor Harris's earlier comment, going forward as we approve new drive-throughs within the city, that's the opportunity for the president setting on the city's behalf. So every time we assess a new drive-through being proposed, we make sure that the off-street space is available for those vehicles. what we're trying to deal with now are existing situations that are out there. And in some cases, such as University Avenue, it is an existing situation. And so we're trying to accommodate the new use of the space with active transportation as much as possible. But certainly the precedent setting is through approval of new drive-throughs within the city. And anytime we make a change on the street, we try to accommodate as much as possible the existing use. But it does happen in other places around the city and in other places in other communities too.
Yeah, it would be nice to see us addressing some of it. It certainly creates a challenge for not so much other traffic because, you know, they can pass them and squeeze through there, but more so pedestrians and stuff like that because they're lined up on the sidewalk, and it creates a challenge, especially in a pedestrian-heavy neighborhood. Second question, just overall and perhaps more specific to the speed limit changes in the schools and the through the Safer School Zones program, is moving forward, is the opportunity there to have public safety lens on it through committee?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And in fact, likely at the next public safety meeting, we will get into some more discussions around traffic calming within the city, for sure. So there'll be some more in-depth conversations at the public safety committee level, like we did at the very first meeting last July, in terms of advice and feedback and input from the committee on different speed enforcement requirements.
Great, thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Councillor Rodman.
Thank you, Deputy. So I have just a couple of comments and questions. So first of all, about the alternate side parking, Director O'Reilly, just wondering how is it going to be communicated other than street signage that that there would be like alternate side parking just from December to May? How are we going to communicate that out? Because I think that when we keep changing things, maybe it's going to cause confusion. So how can we communicate that out?
So I guess first of all, our hope is that this is going to be a more permanent solution and put in place for a longer period of time. Absolutely, as you point out, the signs on the streets themselves will communicate the new law. I guess the good thing is that if people continue to alternate side park for a period of time on those off months, it's not going to cause an issue, right? Because you'll basically still be permitted to park on both sides of the street. So we'll work with our communications department to make sure that the word gets out as broadly as possible to the public to make sure they're aware of the change. But again, I think it'd probably be word of mouth, people knowing the change is happening. And like I said, if there's a period of time where some people are still obeying all year long by the alternate side parking, it's not going to cause any safety or traffic issues.
Okay. And of course, we talked earlier, Director O'Reilly, so I'm having some challenges with the University Avenue changes. So I was just thinking, so how, I think that part of my challenges is I'm a little bit concerned about people leaving Jean Coutu and passing through pedestrians and then a bike lane and then cars and maybe going into the other side of the road. What are your thoughts on that as far as, safety?
Well, I guess the three reasons why we're doing this project at University Avenue are all based on improving safety for multiple modes of transportation. So just to summarize, and this was discussed with council before, so again, we're introducing bike lanes, for cyclists. We're dealing with some congestion problems near the western end of Millage Avenue. We're moving a bus shelter further down from where it is now. We've introduced yield signs for that slip lane for Millage Avenue on University Avenue. The reduce the number of through lanes is going to decrease the number of conflict points as people coming out of those driveways as well. But certainly the Jean Coutu driveway itself is not going to be impacted. They'll still be able to turn left or right out of that driveway. And so I think generally overall is going to be improvements for all modes of transportation in terms of safety. But like everything else, when there's a change in use on the street, it's about balancing all the needs of the street, and everybody's going to have to, adapt to those changes for sure.
I just keep thinking, are we going to feel like we need a traffic light there after all this? But I'm also wondering, as part of the plan, and I know that you're planning on moving the bus stop down, which is a great change to make, for sure, because the bus usually just stops dead as soon as people are turning, and it just doesn't work very well. Is that going to be something in the plan that would change first?
Yeah, we're actually sequencing it that way. So we actually started the project last fall by cutting back that median for that left turn into Morton's. That's complete. We made sure the new crosswalk up at Bloom Street is installed, which it is now. Next step is to move that bus stop closer to Bloom Street, get it out of the way of that congested area, but also put it close to the crosswalk. That's next step. And then the final step is the introduction of the bike lane. So yeah, we are sequencing the project in a logical way to reduce impacts on everybody.
And then my next big question is,
Councillor, I'm going to have to cut you off there. You're over a
Okay.
minute over your 3, so.
I would normally go a second round.
What?
I'd normally go a second round. Can I just ask
Well,
one more
let's find
question?
out if anybody else is good
Sure.
the first round. No? Everybody else good? Okay, carry on.
Thank you.
You got 2 minutes left.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. So then my next question is, if, like, say, for example, Schedule C came out of this bylaw, I think you still have approval to put those bike lanes in, right? So it's a go-ahead anyway, with or without this?
I would say that's not correct. So the issue we're going to have is that if we basically reduce it down to one through lane, put the bike lane in, then we're going to create that potential hazard of cars queuing up into that one remaining through lane now we have in that direction, which is very close to that intersection. So the recommendation from staff is that no stopping zone has to be part of the solution in order to improve the safety and effectiveness of the entire project.
So if that was pulled out of there, then you would not put bike lanes in there?
Well, we reassess it as staff in terms of what to do potentially in as another solution than that, but that's part of that overall plan is to improve the access as well as reduce safety hazards within the area. If that part comes out, we'd have to reassess it.
Yeah, I had talked to you earlier, and you said, there might be other changes that we'd have to make, but I always thought that the Wendy's entryway to be further down to allow vehicles to kind of like snake around to go into Tim Hortons would alleviate cars being held up on the road. I know that requires probably some big changes, but, I think it's something that I'd like to see considered. Thank you.
Okay? All right, next item. We're back to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So for this item, 10.1, it requires 2 motions. Motion for the bylaw reading by title and second reading by title.
Okay, can I get a motion for the first reading? Councillor Stewart and Councillor Killen. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the traffic on streets in the City of St. John, bylaw MV 10.1 and amendments thereto.
And can I get a motion for second reading? Councillor Killen and Councillor Hickey. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the traffic on streets in the City of St. John, bylaw number MV 10.1 and amendments thereto. Next item is 10.2. It's another bylaw reading. This one is bylaw respecting the procedures of Common Council electronic meetings.
Okay, we'll go over to General Counsel for this.
Thank you, Deputy. Before Council for third reading this evening is an amendment to the procedural bylaw related to virtual attendance at council and committee meetings by council members. When council enacted its procedural bylaw in 2010, before the pandemic and the era of virtual meetings, Council chose at the time to limit virtual attendance to special or emergency meetings of council or closed committee meeting of the whole meetings. It did this at section 7.5 of the bylaw. That provision was carried forward in the current version of the bylaw. However, the Local Governance Act provides broader authority than the procedural bylaw currently does by permitting the use of electronic means of communication to participate in any council meeting or committee meeting in the circumstances listed in the Act. The proposed amendment this evening aligns the procedural bylaw with the Local Governance Act by allowing council members to participate electronically in any council meeting or committee meeting, provided the requirements of the Local Governance Act are met. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you. Any questions? Questions? Okay, can I get a motion for third reading, please? Councillor Lowe, Councillor Redmond. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
And Deputy Mayor, this one has to be read in its entirety, and then we'll need one more motion by title. So I'll just read it out in its entirety quickly. A bylaw respecting the procedures of Common Council of the City of St. John. The bylaw respecting the procedures of Common Council of the City of St. John enacted on the 3rd day of May 2021 is hereby amended as follows. 1. Section 7.5 is amended by repealing subsection 1 and substituting the following. Requirements, provided the conditions set out in Section 69 of the Local Governance Act are met. A member may participate in any meeting, in any council meeting, committee of the whole meeting, or other council committee meeting by means of a telephone conference call or video conference. 2. Section 21.11 is repealed and replaced with the following. 21.11, committee meetings open to the public. All meetings of committee of council shall be open to the public. Sections 7.3 and 7.4 inclusive shall apply if necessary to close a committee meeting or a portion of a committee meeting to the public. 3, Section 22.29 is repealed and replaced with the following. Open meetings exception. The provision of Section 7.2 through 7.4 inclusive regarding closing meetings to the public apply to regular and special meetings of Committee of the Whole, and except as permitted or provided in the Local Governance Act, Committee of the Whole meetings shall be open to the public. And now one more motion, Deputy Mayor, by title.
Can I get a motion for read by title? Thank you, Councillor Killen, Councillor Stewart. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion is carried.
A bylaw respecting the procedures of Common Council of the City of St. John.
Next item, Chronicler.
Next item, Deputy Mayor, is under committee reports, and it's item 13.1, Finance Committee, Main Street North Active Transportation Conceptual Plan.
Okay, over to you, Finance Chair Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy. We've got a handful of Finance Committee recommendations. I'll move the recommendation and with the seconder, give a little blurb summary for council. So,
Councillor Ogden, second.
okay, so good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Your Finance Committee is pleased to recommend that council move forward with detailed design on the Main Street Active Transportation Plan. Last week, members of Finance Committee received a presentation on the conceptual design for the work, which is scheduled in the next item in your kit. While there is some risk moving forward with detailed design due to the requirements of the funding program, committee members are supportive of moving forward with detailed design as there is a strong support for this project among council and the risk of not proceeding with the construction is very low.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
13.1.1, Main Street North Active Transportation Conceptual Plan.
There we go. Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council. We have Director O'Reilly here to provide you an update on the Main Street Active Transportation Project. As you will recall, there was $435,000 included for this project in the quality of life investments in the general fund capital budget for 2022. The intent of this briefing is to present the conceptual designs and to get council support to move forward with this project, including moving forward with detailed design now and referring this project to the 2023 general fund capital budget deliberations for consideration to fund the significant shortfall beyond the monies already approved. With that, I will turn it over to Director O'Reilly.
Thank you, Commissioner and Deputy Mayor, members of council. I really feel great to be here in front of council in person for sure. It's an awesome change. So what's up on the screen right now is the viaduct, and of course Main Street's connected to it. I don't need to tell you on council what that's like. 6 lanes, highway style on and off ramps, built for the automobile. That's the way it's designed today. There's lots of justifications why we need to look differently at how Main Street functions. First, when you look at Common Council's own priorities, it tells a story. Talks about the need for active transportation, safe routes for multiple modes of transportation, and achieving that new balance for how the transportation system works for citizens. Transforming Main Street and the Viaduct, given its current presence, would certainly be an indication that council is supportive of its priorities. There's a lot of alignment with the Central Neighborhood Plan as well, with what you're going to see in a few slides here with the design for Main Street. The Central Plan talks about working with the province to convert multiple outside lanes to active transportation lanes, and again, to turn over that space to other modes of transportation. Of course, the next neighborhood plan that council will be looking at with staff is a North End plan. So of course, those 2 neighborhoods will be connected with this transportation link. There's a lot of alignment with Move SJ in terms of the recommendations specifically for Main Street around protected bike lanes, move towards traffic calming and road diets. And there's a lot of linkage with how this street connects to other cycling routes within the cycling strategy. And of course, this project was identified as a 2022 Quality of Life project and is on the 2022 work plan for city manager. In terms of defining what was going to be done for this project, in terms of advancing it, we considered a lot of different factors. And it was important to set these objectives early on in the process. So again, looking at all modes of transportation, pedestrians, cyclists, and transit, making sure it's an acceptable but not necessarily the same level of service for motor vehicle traffic. Again, looking at traffic calming and road diet initiatives, more green spaces along the street. A lot of consultations with 2 different provincial departments that we need their support on in order to move forward. And again, something we kept an eye on, as you see with the design, is having a project that is affordable. There's a lot of ideas what Main Street could look like, but the challenge is to get a design that actually can be doable within the next couple of years. When we started looking closely at Main Street and the Viaduct, obviously the differences are pretty stark between the 2 streets, and we need to make sure those are consistent and aligned as we look to redesign the street. Of course, Main Street's a road. It has 90-degree intersections, and it has ground below it to support a lot of green space. The Viaduct itself is a highway bridge over top of Highway 1 with a lot of on and off ramps that generate higher speeds. So no matter what solution we were going to address with Main Street and the Viaduct, we knew we had to address those on and off ramps from the Viaduct. Again, vehicles can operate at 56 kilometers an hour operating through those ramps. One of the options that we looked at early on was actually eliminating that interaction altogether by installing a multi-purpose lane down the center of the street. For multiple reasons, which are laid out in our staff report, we recommend against that approach. However, we know we still have to address those ramps. So if you put the pedestrian route, which it is today, and the cycling route on the sides of the street, we have to address those on and off ramps. What we looked at in terms of inspiration to deal with those ramps is something called the Smart Right Turn Channel. Up on the screen here now is 2 pictures of the exact same location in the city of Fredericton. Top screen is the way it was before recent reconstruction, and the bottom screen is a reconstruction of that intersection. This is right at Prospect and Regent when you first come into the city. So the bottom is this Smart Right Turn Channel. And so as you can see, vehicles navigating that lane have to approach it at much more of a 90-degree angle, so they have to go much slower than they used to. The crossing distance for pedestrians is much tighter, and even the sight lines as a motorist approaches the crosswalk is much better. So that was our inspiration in terms of looking at solutions for those ramps on the Viaduct. The general plan for how the Main Street and Viaduct will look is up on the screen now. Again, the before, or as it is now, was on the top. The new design is on the bottom. So again, the intent is to convert those 2 outside lanes over to, in some cases, bike lanes, but in other cases, multi-purpose lanes where there's no sidewalks that are existing. Barriers in place to protect cyclists from those other modes of other vehicle traffic, and again, space in the barricades to protect pedestrians, as well as a speed limit reduction. Again, talking earlier about the need to address those ramps. Here in the top left is the ramps at the Station Street, so near Union Street as it is today, and the bottom right is what the design considers in terms of that intersection. So again, you're going from higher speed, right in, right out lanes to more of a abrupt 90-degree intersection, with much narrower crossing distances for both pedestrians and cyclists. Another ramp coming off Paradise Row. Again, you can go at 40, 56 kilometers an hour there right now with just a yield sign. That is it is today on the top, and on the bottom, again, a sharp right turn angle as you come onto Main Street. Same thing when you get over the viaduct itself. Again, more constrained in terms of the fact that it's a viaduct. However, again, constraining those right-hand turns, making them more sharp, and addressing those crossing locations with some signal infrastructure. The Red Rose T ramp, very challenging with the congestion and the constrained sightlines coming around the corner. So the intent there is to install signals, which will essentially rest on red most of the time for traffic coming off the ramp, and that'll allow both traffic and the pedestrian and cyclists to have a safe crossing as they continue towards Union Street. These two images are what, again, the new design would look like closer to Union Street. Again, you can see the Red Rose T building on the left of the left picture. Again, 4 lanes, a multi-purpose space on the outside, and again, dealing with those on and off ramps. So the entire route from one end to the other is going to be connected for pedestrians and cyclists. So all the way from Chesley Drive all the way to Union Street. You can see in the blue colors are locations where we're adding bike lanes where the sidewalks exist today. The purple areas are indications of shared spaces for both cyclists and pedestrians. Again, including turning that one southbound lane over the viaduct over to cyclists and pedestrians, where of course nothing exists today. As you can see, it connects on to the Campus Harper Connection bike route, which is shown in yellow between Simons and Metcalf, which again make connections to the Harbour Passage. I showed a few slides back, the Paradise Row ramp. We're converting a lot of that asphalt over to green space. 3 pictures on the left of this screen show more green space that we're adding. So we're converting more of that center median right around Portland Street, which right now we close it off as a left turn lane, but it's concrete and asphalt right now. Converting that over to more green space on that center median, and again at some of the ramps, creating more green space, and even down towards the Chesley Drive end, converting that over to more green space. And on the right, you'll see one of the concepts of having shared space between transit lanes and cycling facilities. This one at the bus stop very close to the Mercantile Building. Consultations has been and will continue to be a big part of this project. As I mentioned, again, ongoing continuous dialogue with 2 different departments of the province. Again, this is a provincial highway, the Viaduct and Main Street. We need their support and endorsement for the project. We have a meeting actually scheduled next week to continue that dialogue and continue to seek that endorsement. We are going to be planning to do a Shape Your City site to provide an opportunity for all the public to see the designs. We had a bit of discussion actually at the Finance Committee. Councillor Rodron brought up the idea of some more focused in-person discussions with residents in our North End and South End neighborhoods, and already have that set up, or we'll be setting it up here in a couple of weeks to ensure those parts of the community have a voice in the design. There are financial challenges and risks associated with the project. Again, we went over with Finance Committee on Thursday the financial risk around proceeding to detailed design, and as Councillor Sullivan mentioned, we do have Finance Committee support to do that. But I do want to make sure Council's aware of the costs, right? So again, you did set aside $435,000 as part of the Quality of Life program. We did a cost estimate as part of this conceptual design, and the cost based on the conceptual design is $2 million, not $435,000. So proceeding, we'd have to look at an investment of around $2 million in order to make this project occur. And again, as I mentioned, we did discuss with the Finance Committee the risk around the $200,000 investment to proceed with detailed design, which we'd have to do in order to ensure have better position for construction next year. So the recommendation specific for council for this evening, again, given the scope, what you saw for design and also the cost estimate of $2 million, we want to make sure as staff and council is supportive to proceed under that cost and scope. Contingent on that, we ask for council support to move to negotiations with EXP Services, who did our conceptual design. So we negotiate with them in terms of going towards detailed design again for that construction next year. And finally, just a referral of that project to the 2023 capital program, again, going from $435 to $2 million. We'll need council's support for extra capital funds to make it happen next year. And with that, Deputy Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Tim. I do have a few questions for you. We'll start off with Councillor Ogden.
This is fabulous. When you look back at the 50-year history of turning that section of Main Street, which only goes up to McDonald's, doesn't go down to Robertson Square, from the Viaduct, that if you look at urban sprawl in Canada and the donut effect, which cleaned out the centers of cities, this was these were major mistakes across Canada. I think of the Spadina Highway and things like that in Toronto, and many academics studied it and realized we were going in the wrong directions because we were building cities for cars and not vehicles. And then on top of that 50 years, we got hit with the provincial tax system, and I believe those two things and urban renewal, the making of that highway really ostracized the north end. And when you drive through and see all those empty lots and not a lot of money reinvested, and then like you said, we're building this road for vehicles and not people, that we are about to reverse those two things. Our number one priority is the provincial tax system, which the city council is working with the province that we can alleviate that, change that. The industrial tax that Halifax and St. John's, Newfoundland keep, we do not keep in St. John. And we run a really, really fabulous city. And these are types of things that other levels of government that can help us with by just letting us empower ourselves. And I think it's just a fabulous job what you guys are doing here. There was approximately 5,000 people, taxpayers, living in that area at one time. So our population dropped and our tax base dropped, plus we paid more to the province. So you can see what happened to the North End and Main Street from this. So we are reversing that, and this is the first step, and you've done a fabulous job here. Just absolutely fabulous. And this is going to not just reimagine Main Street, but I think you're going to see the North End, which is bounded by water and beautiful parks and everything else, come back. And that's the place to invest today. So I just want to thank you for the fabulous job you did.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan?
Thank you, Deputy. Just a quick comment. So as I said in finance, I was a little bit reluctant because this is provincial roadway. So of course I'd hoped that the province would do this, but this has been, Main Street's been like this ever since I can imagine, remember from my childhood. Couple of great things about this projected project is the traffic calming, which I think is huge there. Also, the necessary crosswalks that are there, and just for it to be pedestrian and bike safety. I appreciate, Director O'Reilly, I wanted to say as well, you taking in my comments about trying to engage a little bit more in person with people, and I would encourage maybe some communication go out to Milledgeville and West Side residents that would probably also drive through Main Street to possibly participate in whatever you're going to do. But thank you. It looks really good.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Director Tim. I agree with Councillor Ogden. This is a phenomenal looking project. And what I think it's starting to signal is, we've really done this work in the Central Peninsula Plan and given some of that. I know there's still more work to do on that, but we've given some of the appearance that we're looking for, these tighter crossings. And I know for one, as many others probably have seen, driving down that viaduct and watching people have to cross right at the highway on-ramp or at the top by Harbor Station is just terrifying to watch. So my hope is that, this is a signal to the community that we do want, with plans like these and initiatives like these, we do want to signal our community. These are livable places. We want to make that the accessibility to the uptown, but also from the uptown to the Old North End, much more available to people. So I think this project looks great. I love that you've touched on the green space piece, because we know greening infrastructure, it lowers anxiety, it slows drivers down, it creates a better sense of community and a little more a little more dignity, I guess, to that community space. So there's a lot to celebrate in this. I know it's a big price tag, but we have other levels of government that are talking about these types of initiatives, and there's no way we can create or put fewer vehicles on the road if we're not creating cities that are walkable or cyclable. And that's what this is doing, I think, for us. So I have full support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Deputy. Tough to follow Councillor Harris's act. I think he hit the nail right on the head there, in saying really that, when we look at examples like Main Street, if you're walking in the uptown, it might as well be a wall there. It is the separation between those two neighborhoods, and I think taking steps to build plans like this are what will redefine the North End in particular, and make sure that there is consistent access to the North End beyond needing a car to do so. And certainly, this plan has not been one that's been short-lived. I know you, Deputy, you've been on council for what? 2012, and you've been working on this one since 2012 and working hard at it too. So this is really the product of a lot of work from staff and certainly Tim's team, but also folks around this table like yourself who put a lot of work into it and a lot of time into it. So I think a lot of big thank yous around, because it really is it's more than just changing a street, it's transforming a neighborhood, I think, in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy. Certainly, this has Finance Committee support, and we were quite excited when we saw this last week. But anything that comes through Finance Committee has to come with the financial caution, so here it is. The reason this is before us tonight is to move this forward, we need to get the conceptual design done and paid for, and then we can plan to start doing the work and paying for that. So the risk comes in, happily one of our partners has given us funding that we allocated to starting on the Main Street project. And really important, our partner wants to see that if we're going to use the money for a plan, that we are actually going to implement the plan. So that's the risk. So what comes with that is us now thinking in our minds, and I know, and this is why I said at Finance Committee, Council loves Main Street. We've been dying to do something with Main Street, so we see it going forward. But just remember, we do have all sorts of financial policies that look after how much money we can spend in our capital budgets. So as we go forward, if we're committing to Main Street and thinking, yep, we're looking to our partners for some support on Main Street as well, that it's one more bit into the bucket for the 2023 capital. So just I just mentioned that to have it in mind, because likely in a few months I will come back and say, remember when we've got Main Street to do and whatever else we might pile on it then. But Finance Committee loves the project. For me personally, I just see it as, gosh, what a great renewal. I just have this vision of the renewed entrance to Uptown St. John and how 1972 it currently looks and how 2023 it will look. And if you're going to signal that St. John is moving in the right direction when you're going to our Uptown, driving through this, that'll do it. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen.
Thank you, Deputy. I really appreciate what Councillor Sullivan just said, and I wanted to chime in and kind of follow on that. From growth chair to finance chair, so it's sort of like I also see this as a great investment in our city that will have a huge return. I think it puts us on par with other places that have networks like these that are so attractive. Biking through Fredericton is fun. It's not traumatizing like going through some of our intersections here. So I do think that will spur growth. I think there's just a real push for more green ways of transportation. So it's making us become, as Councillor Harris sometimes says, a 22nd century city, meaning we're going to be actually a place that will survive until then. So I really do think that it's important that we look at our streets this way and continue to find creative solutions. And as every year passes, you know, there's new buckets of money and funding that open up from the feds and the province, and we can get really good at getting that cash. I really think we can. So I'm really excited for this and to not feel like I'm gonna perish biking on Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you. The comments around the table tonight are music to my ears. As Councillor Hickey said, you know, I've been looking at this since 2012. We had students involved, you know, doing a project on it back in 2013, I think. Yeah. So, you know, you have to be patient. We've been patient, and here we are today. So the positive comments and certainly the enthusiasm is welcome. So, Common Clerk, we need a motion.
Yeah, we'd need a mover and seconder and a motion.
Okay, okay. I've got Councillor Ogden and Councillor Hickey for this one. And all in favor signify by saying aye. And opposed, if any. Unanimous. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next item is 13.2. It's another Finance Committee report, City of St. John Climate Change Vulnerability Assessment Methodology.
Back over to you, Finance Chair Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy. For those of you who missed last Thursday, she was a doozy of a Finance Committee meeting. And this one we have in front of us, I'll move the recommendation that the Finance Committee recommends that Common Council endorse the City of St. John Climate Change Vulnerability Assessment Methodology.
Okay, and seconder, Paula Radman.
I said it once without stumbling. Let's see if I can say it again. This report, it seeks Council's approval to endorse the City of St. John Climate Change Vulnerability Assessment Methodology that will meet the Federation of Canadian Municipalities FCM funding agreement and integrate climate change vulnerability risk into decision-making as it relates to infrastructure assets such as roads, buildings, water, and wastewater systems. For those of us who aren't quite as sciencey as those who presented last week, it means this. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which is very good at supporting municipal projects, wants to make sure that municipalities are thinking about how climate change will affect those assets in the future. And to qualify, we need to prove to them that we are looking at how climate change will affect our roads and underground pipes and everything as we move into the future. And the good news for the City of St. John is we have really good people that work for the City of St. John who have been looking at projects like this before FCM said we had to do it. So that's in English what we got presented. That was very sciencey last week, incredibly important, but we got good staff who are working on it.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Harris.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, to I think it's City Manager, because I expect this will be something Samir talked about to you, Acting City Manager Brent McGovern. I know when we passed our climate change adaptation plan as well as our mitigation plans, both community and corporate, it came with some level of reporting, and then there was a different source of reporting once this council passed the City's Race to Zero pledge, where we had to upload a certain level of reporting. This sounds like a different level of reporting, or at least assessments. I have two questions on it, but one is, you know, how bogged down are we in this? I understand we have to do it, but is there any overlap in the reporting topics that we do currently that we can just feed into FCM?
Yes, yeah, that's a good question. Through Your Worship, in terms of reporting, we do have the Race to Zero, which is separate and apart from this. And this is more based on asset management and looking at, as Councillor Sullivan mentioned, instead of just a deterioration-based assessment, which is the way we viewed infrastructure investment in the past, it's really applying that climate lens. And so this is really being done through our asset management team in terms of adding a bit of a matrix and additional measures to assess when looking at big capital investments, whether it be roads or wastewater, water infrastructure, so that we're looking beyond the life cycle and taking into your point the climate adaptation. So it's separate and apart, and it is a separate tracking system that we're doing.
Yeah, so it's different, there's an overlap. And I guess my second question was, I hear this is mostly about infrastructure. This doesn't have to do with buildings or any developments besides. Would it just be city-built buildings, or would we be looking at developments of any kind that anybody, I guess why I'm asking the question is, it would be helpful for me as a counselor to be able to look at a development that somebody's doing and see a report card, this building scores an A on its attention to detail, to the mitigation of whatever flood area it might be in or whatever. And then it also takes into detail, it's a passive build house, so it's a high efficiency level, which is going to support, the rest of the cities. I know it's a lot, and I'm not suggesting that this reporting is going to do all of that. But is there any way that this type of reporting could get us to that place at some point in time, where we could get that level of detail about developments through that climate lens?
That is the intent, to really continue building as we're doing now, and encapsulating additional measures and assessments. And so this would be for any major investment. Like if we were to build a multiplex arena, for example, this would be something we'd look at in terms of its siting, making sure it's in an area that is flood proof. And that is a natural process that our engineering team would look at in terms of applying flood mapping and all those sorts of things to it. So those are the sorts of things we can write in reports and highlight for council for their awareness.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks, Deputy. Just to add on a little bit with regards to Councillor Harris's question. Thankfully, because we have staff who have been working on files like this, we weren't starting from scratch. One of the questions that I asked at our Finance Committee meeting was, where do we fit with other municipalities with regards to work like this? And certainly I was, I think I knew the answer before I asked the question, but I was reminded that our city is a few steps ahead of most. So with FCM looking for this within applications, my expectations is people will be calling St. John to find out what we are doing in order for them to catch up. But from an important financial lens, before we started working on this, we've been working on lifetime costs for assets, not just the amount to put the pipe in the ground, but what's it going to cost us over the lifetime. So as I understand it, what this will do is as our engineers design our projects, one of the lifetime costs they've got to consider now in the matrix, so it's adding to their planning, is what's it going to cost with regards to climate change effects on this over the lifetime as well. And it really is something that most of us, when you buy a house or put your driveway in or whatever, that's not a normal, or has not been a normal thought process. So with this methodology, yes, it meets FCM's requirement, but for our financial health, it also helps with our planning, make sure we look after our assets, and one more piece. So it will become part of our regular analysis as we do work now. It's not going to be an add-on. This is going to be part of business.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next item, another Finance Committee update, 13.3 on your agenda. It's Utility Fund Revision and General Fund Revision 2022 capital programs.
Chair Sullivan, back to you.
Thank you, Deputy. The recommendations in the kit, and I'll stumble over all the numbers. I'll move the recommendation that's in the kit and then give you a high-level overview.
Okay, Councillor Hickey, and it's your seconder. Go ahead.
Thanks, Deputy. So the main reason for the proposed revisions to the 2022 Utility and General Fund capital programs are really threefold. One, as we've seen over the last few meetings, capital projects that are currently underfunded because of recent construction tender results. The tenders are coming back higher than we had projected. We have a project cost that's increased based upon the latest engineer's estimate, and we have one priority project that's come to light that requires the reallocation of capital funding to allow a safety matter to be addressed. The four projects are Mecklenburg Street infrastructure renewal, the Dominion Park rehabilitation project, the Woodlawn Park lift station project, and the Carlton Community Center concrete structure slab replacement. We have one project on the utility side with the Lancaster Lagoon that we are going to, for this year, delete from this year's funding. We are going to move funding to those other projects. And also, it will give us a bit of a buffer for what we were expecting to be some higher tenders coming through in the future, as we've seen with inflation's effect on the city. So it's thanks to the finance crew, but also those who work in the utility and our infrastructure. I think we are going to see more work as we focus on how the finances are coming through in the short term, and this is one of those pieces. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any lights on. It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next item is 13.4 on your agenda, another Finance Committee update. This one is entitled Travel Policy Updates.
Mr. Sullivan, back to you.
The recommendation is to be resolved that Common Council approve the updated travel policy.
And a second? Councillor Stewart, okay. Go ahead.
As we continue to smartly, I guess, be stewards of the taxpayer dollar and update policies, nobody's really traveled in the last couple of years, but now that we are again, Finance thought it was important to update and modernize our travel policy. It's very much a technical staff document, and the information's in our kit. I don't really have a whole lot extra to add.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any lights on. It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next item is 13.5 on your agenda. It's another Finance Committee update, Regional Development Corporation, Federal Government Public Transit and Housing Funding.
I think this is the last one. Councillor, go ahead.
I'm telling you, Finance was a doozy. This one, I will read the numbers out. The Finance Committee recommends Common Council approve $4,656,256 in our 2022 budget adjustments for public transit and affordable housing to be fully funded by other levels of government as follows. St. John Transit General Capital Budget, about $3.3 million. General Operating Budget for St. John Transit, $227,000. And affordable housing in neighborhoods, the general operating budget of $1.1 million.
And it's been seconded very enthusiastically by Paula Radwan.
So Common Council, we executed a letter of offer with the Regional Development Corporation on April 4th, 2022 for project funding to support public transit or housing. To take advantage of the funding opportunity, Common Council must approve these adjustments to the 2022 general fund budgets. There is no requirement for the city to match these contributions. So thank you to our provincial and federal partners. Finance Committee makes this recommendation. Details will roll out in due course on these projects as we finalize them in-house and work with our partners on what they are going to be. But we need to make these budget adjustments so we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have one question. Councillor Hickey?
Thanks, Your Worship. Not so much a question as much as a comment or excitement around this opportunity in particular. For me, it's us wading in with some significant funding into affordable housing and neighborhoods, as listed as the second item. You know, the city, I think we made it clear when we announced our catalytic projects and our catalytic advocacy items that St. John was in a housing emergency and St. John was in a housing crisis, and now we're going to be able to step up with the funding to be able to support our neighborhoods and our communities to make sure that more doors are becoming available, and or whether it's through build or incentive, whatever that looks like, there will be increased access for a community like ours that desperately needs it. And as we clear the 1,200 mark of the waiting list for affordable housing in St. John, the need only increases. So I'm very enthusiastic about it because it's going to, I think it will put the affordable housing action plan that we're working on into just that, into action.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also would want to say how enthusiastic I am about this, and agree with Councillor Sullivan. It's a great opportunity to get support from other levels of government for the things that are most dear and important to us and that we're struggling with the most. I hope that people who are watching this and tracking along, we see as councillors a lot of negativity and a lot of frustration around the affordable housing file, specifically inflation, costs of buildings going up, which means the cost of rents are going up. And population growth means that landlords now don't have to be as competitive with their pricing. They can raise their prices. But what we have done is to put that affordable housing action plan, at the forefront. We're going to get that done. It's going to come with recommendations that need to be resourced. And beyond that, I've certainly brought policy ideas for staff to consider to this table that now, should there be a reason to put some of these policies in place that can build different types of housing that serve people who need the housing most, we're going to be able to put resources behind that, and more resources than we've ever seen. So it's a big jump for us. I know Growth Committee, I know Chair Killen will be excited to, and the rest of Growth Committee will be excited to look at that along with Commissioner Hamilton to come up with the best strategy and the best placement of those resources. And so, yeah, it's certainly well-timed and it's exciting to see.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Just to wrap it up, Deputy, I guess a couple of pieces. This is the last finance piece tonight. First and foremost, I mentioned it before, but with this kind of envelope, as much as we continue to have good, strong conversations with our partners in the federal government, provincial government, about how to move St. John forward, when RDC and the federal government come along and give us a grant like this that does not require the city to put in our own funds in order to move files, we all share the same constituents. And so this is a true partnership, so thanks to them. Also, as you can see from the number of items that were on tonight, your finance committee made up of Councillor Hickey, Councillor Radwin, Councillor Norden, and her worship had a good, powerful meeting the other night, supported by not just staff from finance, but as you've seen, the range of items we've had have come from all across the organization. So strong financial mind, and thank you throughout the organization from this chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor. I can't tell you how much we appreciate Finance Committee's commitment, because since we've implemented the committee system, we've come leaps and bounds under Commissioner Fudge and you and former council. So, we talk about the needs of the community, and certainly the federal government stepped up here and has listened. And, I mentioned about the over $90 million last year. I wasn't talking about this. There's $4 million landed in our lap. So anyway, it's all good news. It's well needed. And call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Next item, Common Clerk.
The last item under committee reports is 13.6. This one's from the Growth Committee, and it's Municipal Encore Program 2022 Memorial Cup contribution.
Nice to see my growth chair get the chance to say something. Go ahead, Councilor.
I love the finance update. That's amazing. I'm really excited for everything you all are working on. But we're going to switch gears a little bit. And so before council, we have a recommendation from Growth Committee to provide municipal support for the 2022 Memorial Cup being held here in St. John in June. At our May 10th meeting, we received a presentation from the host organizing committee with a financial request to the City of St. John to support hosting this multi-day event. Hosting the event in this is a very significant win for St. John, and the municipal contribution was anticipated as part of the bid process. The expected economic and community impacts in St. John due to this tournament are very significant, with 14,000 visitors coming to the region with a prospective $7 million in visitor spending, $5.7 million in local GDP impact, $1 million in national media exposure, accessible and inclusive wraparound community programming that will draw thousands of people to Uptown, including, which is close to my heart, LGBTQIA plus market. And Indigenous events, so many really cool things happening. And also a new legacy ball hockey arena that will be valued at $500,000 and a series of professional murals. So we'll be bringing a lot of economic and community benefits to support St. John. And in the efforts to recover from COVID-19, it really is sort of our big first showing, if you will. So the Growth Committee concluded that a municipal funding contribution is aligned with our the Encore program, which is the Economic and Community Recovery Program. The Growth Committee recommends a contribution in the form of $150,000 operating grant from the city and an additional $100,000 to support unplanned air quality improvements required for the event. Further, it is recommended that the city access funding from the Municipal Economic and Community Recovery Program to support this contribution. Commissioner Hamilton is available here this evening, and I would also move the recommendation from Growth Committee.
Okay, I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Stewart. Any other comments or questions? Oh, Councillor Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy. Commissioner Hamilton, I guess I have a couple of questions. And we talked about it before. The Memorial Cup team and committee has done a pretty A+ job at making this event bigger and broader than it has been in most other cities. But can you help me understand what will be the brass tacks of what we're paying out as a city corporation toward this group to host this committee here at the 12th hour? To me, I'm looking at it, I know what Councillor Killen mentioned in that there was an expectation from this committee, and we certainly made it clear that we wanted to support it, but now we're here and it's too late to turn back, and we're being given what looks to me as a pretty hefty price tag for it, with not much of an understanding of, is it payable, can it scale back, can we drop something off? I mean, most people understand you don't go out on a night on the town, unless you've paid the bills and you've got enough food in the fridge. And so I'm looking at this, and I love that they went for the home run. But what I don't understand is, what will we be contributing in the end if we adopt what's here?
Deputy Mayor, through you to Councillor Harris. Certainly the contribution that's being made here in terms of the $150,000 in operating grant to the host organizing committee is lower than some of the other jurisdictions. Most other jurisdictions who have hosted, staff did a comparator review across Canada of the last 6 events, and this would be the lowest, the $150,000 contribution. And certainly, given that we are in a much smaller market than other host cities, staff feel that this is a reasonable contribution. This is a national scaled event, and certainly a contribution of this scale is supportable and reasonable in terms of the significant GDP contribution that's expected through this event. And we certainly had the opportunity to have a lot of dialogue with the Halifax host city around, and they in fact did a post-event STEAM assessment of their event, and certainly it yielded significant benefits for that community. So we are pretty confident that the recommendation we're putting forward to you today is supportable in terms of the economic and the community programming, which, as you note, is quite unprecedented in terms of looking across the country and previous events.
Right. So, but what I'm trying to understand, and I get exactly what you're saying, so thank you for that, because it answers half the question. But there was a request for $400,000 in cash from the city of St. John. a request for $100,000 from Envision, a request for $100,000 for in-kind support from the city and its controlled entities, which I don't know what that means, and then an additional $150,000 from the region, which it hopes to receive in-kind support. I know we had an extra cost with the equipment needed to ensure that the ice surface, where it's later in the year, that there would be proper ventilation at TD Station. But how much money are we actually going to be contributing out of all those requests? Because most of Envision's money comes from this council. So can you help me just land there, which exactly how much is going to be? Is it just $150K that we're giving?
We are giving $150,000 an operating grant and an additional $100,000 to support the air quality improvement. So we had already, as a city, included in our budget $200,000 to support that effort, but it came in over budget. So it's $250,000 in total is our contribution, and hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Radwell.
Thank you, Deputy. Through you to Commissioner Hamilton. I just wanted to ask just a couple of questions. So with the Encore program, what will be the balance after this gets approved, if it does?
Yeah, so there's through you to the counselor, there is I believe around $340,000 that exists in the Encore program that was a portion of the growth reserve that was set aside, and so with the additional funds, should council approve them tonight, there would be $90,000 remaining for that. For future programming. And we will be coming back to Growth Committee with recommendations around the Encore program.
That's great. And just one other question. I'm just wondering if you have any idea how much media, the value of the media that is going to be done for this event, this national event? Like how much would it be valued if we put a price tag on it?
Yes, we understand it's significant. It's national exposure and value it at over $1 million. So certainly puts us on a national stage.
That's great. I think this will be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, this is an amazing event for the city of St. John to host. It's going to put us back on the national stage. I remember when the figure skating, national figure skaters were here in St. John, and you know, we had people from all over Canada coming in. So it's definitely going to be big, and it's going to help, you know, with the local businesses and the hotels. So we've got the motion and seconded. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Norton.
Actually, fine if you skipped over me. You know, just for the sake of listeners, I think an event like the Memorial Cup is critical. It's key as it relates to our rebound from post-pandemic stall, if you will. People are craving something like this as a reboot, if you will, to our economy, and it is an economic. Certainly an economic driver. I know in talking to organizers, just looking at the economic impact assessment that had in Halifax was huge, and I guess I've got 2 minutes and 21 seconds, but I'll only take about 30 seconds of those with your indulgence. In Halifax, and I know we're comparing apples to oranges. We just, it's the way it is. It's why we get to choose where we live. If you like apples or oranges, you choose Florida or you choose St. John. So here you go. Accommodations in Halifax, close to $4 million. Restaurants and bars during that period saw over $2 million of injection. Groceries and other food, they actually took that down, mined it, drilled right down to participants. Everybody that went to the Memorial Cup spent about $103 at grocery stores, convenience stores, and that resulted in over $582,000 of extra expense or revenue generation into those food providers or grocery store outlets, if you will. Public transportation saw an increase of $46,000 in their revenue during the period of the Memorial Cup, so close to $50K of extra revenue there. Local transportation saw about $150,000. Vehicle expenses, so gas, parking, even those that were repairing vehicles because of maintenance issues saw $449,000 directly related to Memorial Cup attendees. Vehicle rentals, $238,000, increased vehicle rentals just from the catchment area within the Halifax Regional Municipality. And all other shopping around $500,000 people are taking in the game. I'm sure they do want to get the Lululemon, but hey, you got to choose one or the other. So I think when you look at the injection, just $9.1 million of visitor spending during that period of time as a result of the successful bid of the Memorial Cup. Folks, make no doubt about it, whether the Sea Dogs win or not, and I hope they do, this economy does. So let's bring it on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Norton. Councillor Ogden.
Yeah, if you look back at the late 70s, early 80s, St. John was really suffering. And a decision was made to put a major tournament committee together. And we went after the Canada Games. And we created Festival by the Sea so that we would have a cultural component to it. Both of them were huge hits. Festival by the Sea continued for decades. And it was something that, I guess, sort of serendipity, that people didn't realize what the Canada Games brought. But the Festival by the Sea was a huge hit, tremendous hit. People used to, not just outsiders, but people used to plan their holidays inside St. John to go to Festival by the Sea. And on top of that, of course, we had the frigate program, but St. John was really the leader in Atlantic Canada at that time period, and we sort of lost our way in the 90s and the early 2000s. But a major tournament committee then went and got Croatia to play Canada in international soccer, and TSN helped bring rugby from Scotland to St. John, and 2 CFL games before anybody else in Atlantic Canada, because we had the venues, which is, a $25 million venue, and so the venues brought more things. So when you look at economists and demographers today, they used to believe that you created jobs to create an economy, and now they're saying, no, you attract people, and that creates the economy. I was talking to a Syrian police officer on Saturday and a Ukrainian refugee on Sunday, and the first thing they said about this place is people are friendly and safe, and it's safe to, so if we make this place attractive for people, we will grow our economy. So what these people have done with the Memorial Cup is just fabulous. I hope Envision St. John doesn't stop here. This is just the start of something, but this can really, and it's just not an attraction to outside people. Local people will develop a greater sense of pride, which will move us even farther ahead. So I think this is just fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ogden. I don't think there's any worry about anybody stopping this. This city's on fire right now. Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, next item is 15.1 on the agenda. It's a citizen letter regarding updating the city's flag. The recommendation is to receive this for information.
Can I get a motion? Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hickey. And I got Councillor Sullivan's first.
Thanks, Deputy. I'm really fine with receiving this for information. However, I do think Mr. Weaver has an important point. And I don't know if it's in our flag or in the Discover logo that we have that's up there, built by an organization that no longer exists, that used to be shared by a group of municipalities that's now labeled as St. John and the Towns by the Bay and not whatever we were labeled when that came up. I think Mr. Weaver's got a point. You just said we are on the move. We certainly are. And we've got all sorts of great things going. And I don't know if it's our flag or our logo or our branding, but I think it's time. So I think his idea is something that's been on the mind of many in the council. And as much as maybe this particular thing is a receive and file, I don't know if his thoughts on, we've got some work to do in this area, I think that's well received.
Well, I agree with you. We did talk during our priority setting about branding the city, and, you know, they're certainly working on that, and perhaps that's going to be part of it. Councillor Hickey, sorry.
Thanks, Deputy. Perhaps specific to Councillor Sullivan's point, any value in referring it to the newly formed Civic Commemorations Committee for discussion?
So you want?
I'd put it out there as a referral.
As a referral motion, so
Yeah,
it'll take
to
precedent.
Civic Commemorations.
So we've got referral motion by David Hickey and seconded by Brent Harris. On that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. That's carried. Thank you. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next item is 15.2, and it's a citizen letter regarding consideration of red light cameras and photo radar vehicles. And the recommendation is to receive for information.
Okay, and I have Councillor Hickey up first.
Thanks, Deputy. Not to hold us here for any longer than we need to be, but perhaps a referral to public safety, if we could. I'd put that on the floor if I had a seconder.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this, and the legislation is in place for this right now, but there's no regulations. So we can send it over to public safety, but right at the present time, there's no action we can take on it.
Okay.
But certainly, as soon as those regulations are written, I think we'll be the first one, you know, buying the cameras because they're worth their weight in gold.
Well, then I'm just happy with the receipt for information, then that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
I'll move it if you need it.
Okay, now I need a second. That's Councillor Stewart. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next are the items that were forwarded from Committee of the Whole at the beginning of the agenda. So the first one of those is 17.1, and it's authorization for Rehabitat Inc. to apply to rezone city lands. In the resolution is that the city authorized Rehabitat Inc. to apply to rezone the city-owned property located on Boar's Head Road and bearing PID number 42622, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents for this purpose.
Okay, can I get a mover? Councillor Sullivan, seconder, Councillor Hickey. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next is another recommendation from Committee of the Whole. This is for a sale of land off Golden Grove Road, and the resolution would be that the city declare a 40-plus acre portion of PID 354829 surplus to its needs in accordance with the policy regarding the acquisition and disposal of property, and that the city enter into an agreement of purchase and sale generally in the form presented to Committee of the Whole with Mike Duffy for the sale of the 40-plus-minus acre portion of PID 354829 as depicted in the said agreement, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said agreement of purchase and sale and any documents ancillary thereto or necessary to effect the transaction.
Okay, can I get a mover, please? Councillor Lowe, seconder, Councillor Ogden. On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
Next is item 17.3 from Committee of the Whole. It's for a sale of land to Debley Resources, and the resolution would be that the city declare two parcels of land identified as PID number 297788 and 55180-947 as surplus to its needs in accordance with the policy regarding the acquisition or disposal of property. The city enter into an agreement of purchase and sale in the form presented to Committee of the Whole at its meeting of May 30th, 2022 with Debley Resources, Inc. for the sale of the two parcels of land identified as PIDs number 297788 and 55180-947, reserving a plus or minus 6 meter wide easement as depicted in the said agreement, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said agreement of purchase and sale and any documents ancillary thereto or necessary to effect the transaction.
Okay, I need a mover. Councillor Stewart, a seconder, Councillor Harris. On the question. Okay, Councillor Radwan.
Thank you, Deputy. So I have a question, I think maybe for Ms. Tompkins. Just wondering, with this piece of land, so this is a piece of land, it's my understanding that Debley Enterprises owns one parcel on one side and one on another side. Is it all connecting to the pit and quarry area where there's rock coming through the Glen Road?
Yes,
Thank you, Deputy. Mr. Brian Irving is on virtually, or I believe he is, so I'll pass this question on to Mr. Irving.
Thank you.
Through your worship to the councillor. The contiguous nature of the three lots that would be assembled are due back onto the Glen Falls floodplain. They are separated by city land that protects the upper reaches of Marsh Creek. And in terms of the contiguousness, I believe there's provincial land that does not allow that part to be completely contiguous heading back towards the city and the provincial works depot.
Okay, so it's not continuous. Has there been any research done at all to see if there was rock taken out of there? And I'm not sure that that's what Mr. Debley wants to do, but has there been any research done to ensure that there would not be any more flooding in the area?
There has not been any excavation of these three parcels as of yet. To the best of my knowledge, they're still quite a bit away from where the existing Fox Farm quarry is. So there has been no studies or no permitting request at this point in time.
Yeah, Acting City Manager would like to chime in on this. Go ahead, Brent.
I would just note, Your Worship, just for information to council, that Commissioner Hamilton does have some information with respect to zoning and maybe could speak to that for the assistance of council.
Your Worship, further to the comments from the city manager, I do know that the subject property is, my understanding is that general area is zoned, designated for rural resource and zoned for rural use, which does not permit a pit and quarry operation. So it's not currently zoned for excavation purposes, and should the proponent be interested in pursuing that, it would require subsequent application come before council and through a public process for rezoning to the pits and quarries zone. So I did want to offer that for council's information.
That's
Thank you,
wonderful.
Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded on the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion's carried. Next item.
The final item is 17.4, recommendation from Committee of the Whole. It's with respect to landlord agreement for 125 Station Street. The resolution is that the city enter into a landlord agreement and estoppel in the form presented to Committee of the Whole at its meeting held on May 30th, 2022 with National Bank of Canada and 727720NB Inc. to enable 727720NB Inc. to obtain a leasehold mortgage on the premises located at 125 Station Street, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the landlord agreement and estoppel and any other documents ancillary thereto.
Thank you. Can I get a motion? Thank you, David Hickey, and seconder. Gary Sullivan on the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Thank you very much. Next item.
And next would be a motion to adjourn, Your Worship.
Councillor Lowe and Councillor Hickey. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, if any. Motion. Thank you.